I do not understand. What is this Trial of Seven? It's another form of trial by combat, ancient, seldom invoked. It came across the narrow sea with the Andals and their 7 gods. In any trial by combat, the accuser and the accused are asking the gods to decide the issue between them. The Andals believed that if 7 champions fought on each side, the gods, being thus honoured, would be more liked to take a hand and see that a just result was achieved. Or maybe perhaps they simply had a taste for swordplay. Ser Duncan the Tall, Baelor Targaryen, and Leo Tyrell, a knight of the 7 kingdoms, the Hedge Knight. The famous Trial of Seven of Ser Duncan the Tall at the Ashford Meadow tourney in 209 AC is one of the most famous trials by combat in the history of the 7 kingdoms, in large part thanks to the domino effect of its outcome still having an impact during the events of the main A Song of Ice and Fire book series, near on a century later. The death of Baelor Breakspear starts off a chain of events that results in the likes of the Mad King being born, and thus heralding the downfall of House Targaryen. What's even more compelling about the trial is how, out of the knights who made up Ser Duncan the Tall's 7, volunteered themselves because it was the honourable and right thing to do. There was little to gain for putting their lives on the line for a newly made Hedge Knight no one had ever heard of, especially when you're standing against the might of House Targaryen itself. These men had little to gain and everything to lose by simply doing the right thing. In this video, we're going to be taking a look at the 6 men who stood alongside Ser Duncan the Tall, delving into their history and analysing why they may have joined Ser Duncan in this life and death highly risky endeavour. Ser Humfrey Hardyng was a knight of House Hardyng from the Vale of Arryn, active during the reign of King Daeron II. It's not clear what his position within the house was, but given how active he is in tourneys during this time, it would suggest he could have been a younger son or cousin. Many younger sons will use tourneys and the renown that can come with them as a way to build their own reputation and legacy. He was a well-respected and skilled knight, whom seemed to treat most of his foes with respect and honour. His brother-in-law is Ser Humfrey Beesbury, but the exact nature of their connection is not clear. Hardyng entered the lists as one of the 5 champions of the fair maiden Ashford, the daughter of Lord Ashford, whose name day celebration the tourney was. His first challenger was Lord Medgar Tully, who he unhorsed with the 2nd lance, and then finishing the contest with swords. Sir Joseph Mallister followed, and was taken from the field senseless after their clash. Humfrey also met his brother-in-law, Ser Humfrey Beesbury. The two shattered a dozen lances in a fierce contest that the small folk quickly dubbed the Battle of the Humphreys. Hardyng prevailed against his brother-in-law as well, and by day's end he had bested 14 seasoned knights and had become a crowd favourite. In the final tilt of the day, he faced Prince Aerion Targaryen, Aerion Brightflame. On the first pass, Aerion's lance struck Humfrey's horse above the breastplate, puncturing through and bursting from the back of the animal's neck in a spray of blood. Humfrey attempted to leap clear of his mount, but his foot was tangled in the stirrups. Those nearby heard his screams as his leg was crushed between the shattered barrier and the falling horse. Lord Ashford nonetheless named Ser Humfrey the victor and awarded him the Prince's Corsair, given Aerion's dishonourable conduct. His triumph was short-lived, as his leg had been broken in 2 places, leaving him unable to continue as a champion. Prince Baelor Targaryen dispatched his own private maester to treat the grievous injury. Later, Ser Humfrey took to the field for Ser Duncan the Tall in the Trial of Seven, seeking vengeance upon Aerion for the injury of his leg and death of his horse. He effectively had to be strapped to his horse to stop him from falling due to the broken leg. If he was to fall from his mount, there would be little he could do to defend himself. He suffered several grave wounds in the trial and succumbed to them not long after it, but is remembered for his courage and valour, standing by Ser Duncan despite his broken leg. The second of the 2 Humphreys, Humfrey Beesbury, was a knight from House Beesbury in the Reach. As well as being the brother-in-law of Humfrey Harding, he too was a renowned and respected knight. Beesbury have been described as young and bold, and fighting with finesse and flair. The inclusion of the word young is important, as it does imply that while the two Humphreys were skilled and respected knights, they were still young enough to be, well, considered young among their peers. In the lists, he wore yellow and black striped clothing, the colours of his house, with 3 beehives depicted on his shield. Again, like his brother-in-law, his position in House Beesbury is not clear, but if he was high in the line of succession, it's likely this information would be widely known. As we have discussed, on the opening day of the tourney at Ashford, Beesbury met Humfrey Harding in a long joust, where 12 lances were broken, with Harding ending up the victor. But alongside his brother-in-law became a fan favourite in what became known as the Battle of the Humphreys, which is still recounted to this day, made perhaps because of their involvement in the Trial of Seven. We are not sure what exactly motivated Beesbury in joining Duncan the Tall in the Trial of Seven, other than it being the obvious honourable thing to do. But it's not hard to assume that the fact his brother-in-law Humfrey Harding had been so wronged and disrespected by Arryn might also have been a factor, with Beesbury wishing to support Harding, given their close relationship. It seems that Humfrey Beesbury was the first to die during the trial, slain in the initial charge by Sir Donald of Duskendale of the Kingsguard in the years after Ashford and the Trial of Seven. Ser Duncan the Tall would carry deep guilt about the loss of the two Humphreys at Ashford. 3 times more they rode at each other, the wind whipping Ser Robyn's hair, while the shards of the broken lance flew around his bare face like wooden knives, which Dunk thought all the more wondrous when Egg told him that Ser Robyn had lost an eye to a splinter from a broken lance not 5 years earlier. Lyonel Tyrell was too chivalrous to aim another lance at Ser Robyn's unprotected head, but even so, Rhysling's stubborn charge, or was it folly, left Dunk astounded. The thoughts of Ser Duncan the Tall, a knight of the Seven Kingdoms, the Hedge Knight. Ser Robyn Rhysling was a knight of House Rhysling from the Reach, meaning that Ashford was a relatively local tourney for him. We do not know his position within House Rhysling. Given he is an elder seasoned knight, suggests he's not the lord or anywhere close to the line in succession. Robyn is described as a grizzled old knight, with salt and pepper beard, and a missing eye. The eye he lost 5 years prior in 204 AC, when a large splinter from a broken lance found its way into the eye slit of his helm. During the tourney at Ashford Meadow in 209 AC, Robyn called out Lord Lyonel Tyrell, his overlord, for a tilt. In their first pass, Leo Longthorn's lance tore away Robyn's helm, yet Robyn, living up to his reputation of being fearless and to some mad, would not concede the joust. 3 more times they thundered down the lists, directly at one another, though Lord Leo, known well for his chivalry, declined to aim at his opponent's unprotected head, knowing the blow would mean certain death for Ser Robyn. Eventually, the Lord of Highgarden struck Robyn square in the breastplate, and hurled him from the saddle into the thick mud of the tourney ground. It was Prince Aegon Targaryen, Egg, the squire to Ser Duncan the Tall, who found Ser Robyn Rhysling to take part in the Trial of Seven on behalf of Duncan. It seems that Egg, who had been to several tourneys and knows his knights well, knew of Robyn's skill and honour and fearlessness in battle, everything needed for a Trial of Seven. So Robyn first met Prince Daeron Targaryen during the initial charge of the trial. It's unclear if he was aware that Daeron had already informed Duncan and his brother Egg that he would take a fall from the first hit and remain down for the rest of the trial. Regardless, Ser Robyn knocked Prince Daeron from his horse and went on to duel and occupy one of the Kingsguard fighting for Arryn for the rest of the Trial of Seven. It's not clear what member of the Kingsguard Ser Robyn fought. Out of all the knights whom fought for Ser Duncan the Tall during the trial, Ser Robyn's motivations for doing so is the most unclear. It seems like the others he was doing so perhaps because it was the honourable thing to do, but some have speculated, given his long and storied career as a tourney knight, he wouldn't turn down the opportunity to take part in the extremely rare Trial of Seven, given the last documented instance was in 42 AC. 166 years ago, at the start of the reign of King Maegor the Cruel, as he fought a Trial of Seven against the militant arm of the Faith of the Seven, the Warrior's Sons, during the Faith Militant Uprising. I may not be ripe, but my good cousin is rotten to the core. Knock the seeds out of him. Raymun Fossoway to Ser Duncan the Tall, a knight of the Seven Kingdoms, the Hedge Knight. So Raymun Fossoway was a knight of House Fossoway of Cider Hall, who was knighted at Ashford, going on to found House Fossoway of New Barrel, a cadet branch of the main Fossoway line, sometime after 209 AC. Raymun was said to be a stocky young man with a square face and a pug nose. His short, woolly hair framing an easy, engaging and pleasant smile. He stood a full head shorter than Sir Lyonel Baratheon, who he himself was said to be nearly as tall as Ser Duncan the Tall, measuring at 6 feet 11 inches. Sir Raymun was seen as quite tall, but seemed small given how tall his peers at Ashford were. Raymun proved more honourable than his cousin Sir Stephen Fossoway, and maintained that reputation of honour with his actions at Ashford. Stephen Fossoway seldom let him forget that he had sprung from a much lesser branch of House Fossoway, and would often mock him as an apple not yet ripe. The fact he is from this lesser branch is likely why he ended up squiring for his cousin. It does seem, however, that Stephen had promised to knight Raymun at some point, but given what we know of Stephen's honour, it is likely he never had any intention to actually do this. During his years as a squire, Raymun donned his own mail, plumed helm, and sword. His shield at first displayed a red apple of the Fossoways, but upon earning his knighthood, he repainted it green, with the green apple becoming the sigil for his cadet branch of House Fossoway, being the origin of the red apple and green apple Fossoway feud decades later. When Ser Duncan the Tall first entered the tourney grounds at Ashford, he saw Stephen defeat Raymun in a practice duel. Catching sight of the Hedge Knight, Stephen at once challenged Duncan to spar, while Raymun eagerly urged him to accept, hoping to see his cousin humbled. Duncan refused to draw into the rivalry, and when Stephen turned instead to challenge Sir Grants Morrigan, Raymun followed Duncan to offer an apology for pressing him into the quarrel. Later, in the final tilt of the first day of the tourney, Raymun looked on in revulsion as Prince Aerion Targaryen deliberately slew Humfrey Harding's horse. Spotting Duncan among the small folk, he sought him out and invited him to share wine in the Fossoway's pavilion. There, Raymun spoke very candidly of his contempt for Aerion and gave his views on the Targaryen princes, stating that Prince Maekar was ill-served by his sons. Their talk, however, was cut short when Maekar's youngest son, Prince Aegon, disguised as Duncan's squire Egg, burst in, begging Duncan's aid against Aerion, who was abusing the Dornish puppeteer Tanzel. Raymun cautioned Duncan against striking a prince, yet Sir Duncan intervened regardless and attacked Aerion. Raymun and Stephen soon arrived with their men-at-arms, and only Aegon's revelation of his true identity spared Duncan's life. While Duncan languished in confinement at Ashford Castle after Aerion demanded a trial of 7, Raymun tended to Duncan's horses. Back at the Fossoway Pavilion, Stephen declared his intention to champion Duncan and departed to gather 5 other knights, though Raymun mistrusted his cousin's resolve. Instead, Raymun joined Aegon in seeking allies of their own. They enlisted the wounded Ser Humfrey Hardyng and his brother-in-law Ser Humfrey Beesbury, both eager for vengeance upon Aerion, while Aegon secured the support of Ser Robyn Rhysling and Sir Lyonel Baratheon. On the day of the trial, Stephen revealed his treachery, turning his cloak and siding with Aerion in exchange for the promise of a lordship. Repulsed by the betrayal, Raymun stepped forward to take his cousin's place. While Duncan hesitated to grant him a knighthood, Lyonel Baratheon performed the rite instead. To distinguish himself from Stephen, Raymun repainted the red apple on his shield green, a change that Prince Baelor Targaryen approved of. While it's not known who Raymun faced in the first charge, it seems it was likely his cousin Stephen. We do know he would meet Stephen in the melee after both lost their mounts, trading blow for blow. Both men left the field alive and relatively unharmed, though Raymun believed he had cracked several of his cousin's ribs. Afterward, Prince Baelor asked Raymun to help him remove his helm. Only then was it revealed that the prince had suffered a mortal wound to the back of the head in the fighting, and died soon after in Duncan's arms. Sir Lyonel, I cannot thank you enough for coming, nor Stephen for bringing you. Sir Stephen, it was your squire who came, the boy, Aegon. My own lad tried to chase him off, but he slipped between his legs and turned a flagon of wine over my head. There has not been a trial of 7 in more than 100 years. Do you know that? I was not able to miss this chance to fight the Kingsguard knights. and tweak Prince Maekar's nose in the bargain, Ser Duncan the Tall and Lyonel Baratheon, a knight of the Seven Kingdoms, the Hedge Knight. Lyonel Baratheon, known as the Laughing Storm, was the Lord of Storm's End and the head of House Baratheon during the reign of King Aegon V. But during the events at Ashford in 209 AC, it is believed he was still only the heir. Like most Baratheons, Lyonel bore the black hair and blue eyes of the house, was tall and massively built. He was described as a swaggering giant of a man, who stood a full head taller than Sir Raymun Fossoway, and was said to be nearly as tall as Ser Duncan, who measured 6 feet and 11 inches, meaning Lyonel was generally a tower of a man, very rare to find someone taller than himself. In the lists, Lyonel donned a cloth of gold surcoat, emblazoned with the crowned stag of his house, and his helm was crowned with a rack of iron antlers. Counted amongst the greatest warriors of his generation, Lyonel was renowned for his battlefield prowess, and not just his ability in a tourney. He had a booming laugh and was known to roar with mirth at his foes, even in the midst of combat, a trait that earned him the nickname, the Laughing Storm, and endeared him to the small folk, and wrote him large in songs of the day. In the opening tilt at Ashford, Lyonel challenged Sir Robert Ashford, one of the brothers and champions of the daughter of Lord Ashford, the daughter whose name day the tourney was being held for. After 9 shattered lances, both men were unhorsed on the 10th pass, tumbling from their saddles. They rose at once and continued the contest on foot, sword against mace, until a bloody and battered Robert conceded defeat, and Lyonel claimed his place among the champions. Lyonel met a succession of lesser challengers, often bursting into booming laughter the instant their lances glanced off his shield. If a foe sported a crest upon their helm, he delighted in striking it free and tossing it into the crowd, to great amusement of the small folk, with the crests often gilded, enamelled, or wrought of silver. The knights he defeated found less humour in that practice, and before long, only those with unadorned helms dared to face him. It was Prince Aegon Targaryen, Duncan's squire, who brought Lyonel to Duncan's side during the Trial of Seven. When he approached the Laughing Storm, he readily agreed, eager to join the first Trial of Seven in over a century, which indicates his motivations for taking part were more to do with prestige and renown gained from taking part. When Duncan hesitated to knight Raymun Fossoway before the combat, Lyonel stepped in to perform the ceremony himself. It's not clear who he faced in the initial charge, but in the melee that followed, Lyonel fought beside Prince Baelor Targaryen against his brother, Prince Maekar. The world made no sense when a great prince died so a hedge knight might live. The thoughts of Ser Duncan the Tall, the Hedge Knight. The final of Ser Duncan's 7 was unexpectedly Prince Baelor Targaryen, Baelor Breakspear, eldest son and heir of King Daeron II, and the Hand of the King, a warrior to the bone. Baelor seemed to be all you could wish in a knight, lord, and heir. He was a man who could win respect with ease, and was as open-handed and as just as his father, King Daeron II. Baelor treated honourable foes with clemency, and dishonourable harshly. Like many young princes in his youth, Baelor was well regarded as a tourney knight with several high-profile victories, most notable of them in 187 AC, when the 17-year-old Baelor won the nickname Breakspear, following his famed victory at his aunt Daenerys' wedding tourney, where he defeated Daemon Blackfyre, King Daeron's bastard half-brother, in the last tilt. Daemon at the time was noted as one of the best warriors of his generation, so Baelor beating Daemon was a huge deal. Baelor distinguished himself in the First Blackfyre Rebellion by leading the Dornish and Stormland forces, which attacked the rear guard of Daemon Blackfyre's rebel army during the Battle of the Red Grass Field in 196 AC. Baelor's forces smashed the rebels against the shield wall of his brother, inspiring a song about the hammer and the anvil. It seems likely that Baelor arrived at Ashford with no intention of actively participating, given that in order to take part in the Trial of Seven, he needed to borrow his son Valar's armour and horse. Prince Baelor spoke in defence of Ser Duncan the Tall, recalling Sir Arlan of Pennytree, as years earlier Baelor had crossed lances with Sir Arlan at the tourney at Storm's End, unhorsing him after 4 hard passes. In memory of the worthy knight, and trusting in his former squire, Baelor's word secured Duncan entry into the lists. When Duncan later struck Prince Aerion Brightflame in defense of the innocent puppeteer Tanzel, Baelor sought him out for a private council and offered his advice. The following day, he would sit in judgment beside Maekar, Leo Tyrell and Lord Ashford, as Aerion demanded a trial of 7, a request that was granted. With the aid of his squire, Prince Aegon Targaryen, and Sir Raymun Fossoway, Duncan was able to gather 5 champions to his cause. One place, though, remained unoccupied, and Baelor, convinced of Duncan's honesty, chose to stand with him despite the fact his own nephew was the accuser and he would be fighting 2 nephews, his brother, and 3 of the knights of the Kingsguard. Before the trial started, Baelor counselled Duncan's champions to wield tawny lances, which would outreach the shorter but more powerful war lances of their foes in the opening clash. He further observed that the 3 Kingsguard fighting on the opposing side would be honour bound not to strike at him, allowing him to engage them without fear of mortal intent. Duncan's party prevailed in the trial, yet the victory came at a terrible price. Baelor had suffered a grievous blow to the head from the mace of his brother Maekar, in part due to the fact his armour did not fit him, given it was not his, but Valar's. The wound proved instantly mortal, and the prince died in Ser Duncan's arms. In accordance with the funeral rites of House Targaryen, Baelor Targaryen, Baelor Breakspear, the Prince of Dragonstone and Hand of the King, was cremated at Ashford, and Westeros would never see his like again.